I'm here today with Marva A. Titley Smith. Marva is a Caribbean-based management and leadership consultant, work and life coach, and writer. She's the co-author of the award-winning She Writes for Him, Black Voices of Wisdom, and the author of Time to Thrive, a busy woman's devotional journal. She's passionate about equipping, inspiring, and empowering women to thrive beyond the 9 to 5 so they can fully live with purpose and passion. Marva starts her day with coffee and her Bible while soaking in the view from her hilltop veranda. She lives in the British Virgin Islands. We are so jealous. With her husband and 2 children. I'm happy to say that Marva is an alum of our Publishing and Color conferences, and you can learn more about Marva at marvasmith.com. So Marva, welcome and congratulations on your new book.
Thank you so much, Brian. It's such an honor to be sitting across the room from you, so to speak, and to know that we can do this virtually over here in the Virgin Islands, as you said, and you're in the U.S., and we can just be here in this same space. That's just totally amazing. Glad to be here.
It really is. I mean, the technology that we have, the internet connections that we have, are just so wonderful, particularly over the last 2 years where, we've been forced to isolate more than is typically the case.
Exactly.
But yet still we get to foster relationships and, do things together, collaborations. And so it's been a wonderful thing. And you've actually been able to come out with a book through all of that. So that's another major accomplishment.
Yes.
So before we get into the book, though, could you tell people more about your background? Because you do some interesting things.
Yeah. I like to say that I wear many, many hats. Certainly the ones that were mentioned in the introduction, but also just in terms of my background, I have a background in architecture and urban design, believe it or not. So that is not mentioned anywhere in my bio. But I like to think that I've come from a space of designing buildings and cities to now helping individuals and persons design their lives to really create a life that is pleasing to God. And for me, as a Christian, that is super important. And so I get to strategize with persons in their lives, and particularly around the space of work-life balance, or as I like to call it, synergy, so that they can really thrive in whatever God calls them to do.
Well, it's just wonderful, that you've got the skill set, right, to do these diverse sets of things, right? I mean, architecture, writing a book, business, spirituality, sometimes they mesh, but a lot of times they're completely separate worlds. So
Yeah.
it's wonderful to see, what you've been able to accomplish in all these different domains.
Mm-hmm. I give the credit to God, Brian, because someone asked me how I do it all, and I say I don't do it all, at least not all at the same time. I do this today and I do this, maybe I do this in the morning, I do this in the afternoon, and you really have to be intentional as well. But I'm certainly grateful that God has given me certain talents that I can use in different areas, and just be able to give him back the glory as well.
So let's talk about the new book. What prompted you to write it in the first place?
It began really with my own experience and my own journey as a working mom, and the struggles that I had in terms of having a career that was demanding and wanting to be a good mom and a good wife and a good Christian woman and all those things, and feeling pulled in so many different directions and wondering if I was the only one. And clearly I'm not. I'm certainly not. And this book then became a sort of like the advice that I wanted to give my younger self. And it's even the advice I'm giving myself today, because the busyness doesn't go away. It still remains. It might take a different form, but certainly we all struggle with many demands on our time. And so this book is me trying to say to women, you can thrive no matter how busy you are. You can spend time with God. You can sit at Jesus's feet, and you can be replenished even though life might be crazy and you have all these things. So that's how it all began.
Well, good for you because writing a book takes a lot of work, obviously, right? A lot of perseverance. And so, when you're a busy person and you're trying to do other things, writing a book sometimes could fall off the priority list. So
Yeah.
how did you find the writing process for you?
Well, I have to say this book was written in a short period of time, but my writing journey goes back probably about 6 years when I started a blog in 2015, 2015. But then I always had this dream of writing a book, and I talked about it for years. I think my newsletter subscribers were like, she's talking about it again. It just never happened. But I had all these book ideas and I had some things I wanted to get out into the world. But I got really focused in 2021. And I was thinking about it this morning, Brian, and I thought of 3 things that really helped me. And I know this wasn't planned, but I'll share them anyway. 3 things that helped me in my writing journey. One is community. Having a community who is able to support you, who's able to cheer you on, who's able to say, we're in this together. Sometimes that might be a Facebook group. Sometimes that might be your family. It might be another group of writers. Certainly the Publishing in Color conference, there are a lot of people there who are able to say, hey, we can do this. This is possible. That is community. So that's one thing, community. The other one is having a coach, because I realize that even though you might have persons cheering you on from the sidelines, having someone who is walking beside you specifically to say, hey, let's figure out how you're going to do this and keep you on task and keep you focused on that. And then the third thing, another C, is commitment. Because had I had the community and had a coach, if I myself wasn't committed to show up, to sit down in my seat and to write when it was hard, when my kids, were still in school and doing all the different things and life, right? If I didn't have that commitment, it certainly would not have happened. So community, coaching, and commitment. I think those 3 things are what God really spoke to me this morning as I was thinking about this interview.
Well, good for you. The 3 C's, the good things to remember. Huh? No question. Very valuable things, right? All of those, no question. So tell us a little bit about how the book is structured.
So it's a 6-week devotional. So it's 1 week at a time, 1 day at a time. And I've written this for the busy woman. So the devotions are actually quite short. You can complete them in 15 minutes a day, 15 minutes at a time, just sitting down and going through it. And it's a short devotion, just a tidbit to begin with. And then there's a Bible passage to read, just a verse or 2. And then a prayer that I actually write out for you that you can repeat or you can come up with your own. And then some reflective questions, because it is a devotional journal. So there are questions, some prompts for you to process what you just read and maybe what God showed you during that time in the Word. And then at the end of the week, I have a recap section where you can look back on the week and see how things went, to reflect and to examine, to celebrate what God has done and what has gone well, and then to anticipate what's coming up ahead, and then to prayerfully plan your week ahead. So it's a time where you can actually intentionally pause, because I know a lot of times we're busy going. So you have your devotions, the weekday devotions, and then on the weekend, you can have that recap time where you can, okay, let me just pause and see where I'm going. So that's really how it's structured.
Cool. Well, it sounds like it's structured in a very helpful, useful kind of way.
I hope so.
Yeah. You also have a Thrive assessment that you talk about in the book. Can you share with folks what that's all about?
Sure. The Thrive assessment is actually something that I developed for my coaching clients a couple of years ago. And it goes through step by step. You notice that I'm very methodical, right? So you'll notice there's an acronym for something. And so Thrive actually stands for something as well. So the Thrive is to take stock, the T, take stock, figure out where you are. The H is to home in on what's important. So your values, the things that drive you, the things that you're passionate about. We want to make sure that we're making time for those things, because if not, then we start to live out of alignment, and then that does not go well. So that's the H. And then the R is to reimagine what's possible, to start to dream again, because a lot of times we're so busy living life that we forget to dream. So that R reminds you to start looking at what God could possibly be doing in your life. And then we have the I, to identify the obstacles, because we know things will always come up. We can't anticipate all of them, but the ones that we know that are possible, we can start to plan for them as well. And then V, envision the victory, to see, okay, what will God be doing in this space? What is he doing in my life? Who do I need? Who can cheer me on? Who can support me? As I get to that finish line, what is that going to look like? And so the V is you setting yourself up to win and making sure you have the resources that can make that possible. And then the E is to execute the plan. You need to have a plan, right? So, I mean, I'm a planner in a lot of ways, so I'm always talking about plans. That E is executing the plan. So the Thrive assessment allows you to look at the various areas of your life, see how you're doing, and then, take stock, go through those steps and get you from where you are to where God wants you to be, where you're meant to be. So I pray that that is helpful. So even I've shared that in the book so that even as you start the devotions, you can start with assessment and see where you're at and then focus on those various areas as you go through the book.
So what do you say to the people who are just too busy to do this, right? The skeptics to say, no, I just don't have the time.
Yeah, you do have time. I am guilty of saying that myself. So I totally get it. I get that you have a lot going on in your life, but I also know that we make time for the things that are important to us. So I invite you to look at your schedule perhaps in a slightly different way than you might have been doing before. So you may need to tack this on, tack on your time with God with something that you're already doing. If you're able to spend some time in the bathroom, that is an easy way to have a book with you, to get into the Word, to be able to spend that 15 minutes. We all have 15 minutes, Brian, I believe. And so it's looking at how can I do this differently? I believe that many times we get overwhelmed at the thought of if we're going to have our devotions, it needs to be an hour, an hour and a half, 2 hours block of time. I need to have Sabbath rest and I think all of that is great, but I think we often negate how powerful just a short time can be. So look at your time differently from you might have been doing before and see that you can actually do this.
So after people have read the book, gone through, the whole program, what would be the number one thing that you hope that they take away from it?
That you're not too busy to thrive. I think of thriving in terms of John 10:10, that Jesus came to give us life to the full. We sometimes have the full part in terms of busyness, but we want to have the abundance that he promises. So my hope as persons read this book and go through the devotions is that they will see themselves as Jesus sees them and that they will be invited into his presence all over again, that they will see him anew as well, and that they will be able to thrive in all the areas of their lives, that it won't just be that you're thriving at work, but your home life is suffering, or you're thriving in your finances, but your health is suffering, so that there will be this sort of a holistic approach to living your life in a way that will be pleasing to God.
So as you know, much of our audience are writers. What can you say about your process of launching the book, given that during the pandemic, number one, and number two, you're, somewhat isolated from major metropolitan areas physically, right? So what kinds of things did you do to launch the book?
I am online with a lot of Facebook groups and writing groups. That has been super helpful. And because I've been writing and blogging for many years, I have, friends in that space who were willing to come alongside and help me get the word out about the book. I created a launch team, invited friends in. Some people joined whom I never met before, so I was super grateful for that. But just being able to recognize that we're not confined by our physical space, that because we have, now there are many things we can say about the pandemic, but certainly one of them is that a lot of us are now more comfortable in this online space because we've been pushed into online meetings and online conferences. And so we're able to get more comfortable online, meeting persons, making those connections, and being able to support one another in that way. So even though I live, thousands of miles away from many of the persons who are buying this book, I'm able to get that word out because I have partners in a space that I may never have been in. So that has really been helpful, having that technology.
Absolutely. It's so good to hear that you've been leveraging that so well. So, obviously your website, right? People can go to your website to buy the book. What are the other locations there where it's available?
Yep. Yeah. It's on Amazon as well. It's in paperback and ebook. So you can get to thriving right away if you get the ebook, but certainly the paperback is online. So you can pick up a copy of the book on Amazon. And as you mentioned, you can go to my website as well and find the link there, but certainly directly from Amazon works very well.
And you want to tell people who the publisher is for the book?
Surprisingly, Brian, I am the publisher.
Okay.
It's a self-published book. So I've used my business name as a publisher. So I'm self-publishing it in that way. And I'm fortunate that I've had the experience of publishing in two different ways so far this year. The first book you mentioned, the She Writes for Him, Black Voices of Wisdom, was with Redemption Press. And now this one, Time to Thrive, is a self-published work.
Good. And so did you hire freelance editor, freelance book cover design? Or how did you go about orchestrating it?
Sure. Yes. Before I even wrote the book, I knew there were a couple of things that I wanted to hire out because I want my work to look professional, to be done in a certain way. And so I knew for sure that the cover design is something that I was going to have someone else do, have a professional do. So cover design, editing, and book formatting. So the interior layout for the paperback, the layout for the ebook, those were all done by professionals. And I was just sitting back and watching the process and paying the money and, guiding it in that way. But I was keen that there's certain things that I'm good at and there's certain things that I'm not. And even if I'm slightly good, I'm not a professional. So I wanted to make sure that it was done well. And I hope that that comes across.
Oh, yes, that absolutely does. And, those are the three things that I recommend if someone's going to be independently publishing a book, that those typically are the things that, you should hire a professional to do, just as you have. How did you go about finding folks to fulfill those roles with you?
Mostly in the groups that I'm in. The publisher, not the publisher, sorry, the editor is someone that I knew from years ago through my church. So I was able to reach out to her and say, hey, I have a book coming up. So she was more than happy to do that. And then in terms of the cover design, based on a group that I'm in, there was a referral that was made. And so I followed that up. And then the formatting, my book coach was able to point me in that direction and get the formatting done for the interior. So it's using those contacts that we have because I didn't know anyone beforehand. And now, for my next book, I know, okay, this is the person that I'll be using because now I've established those relationships.
Relationships are just key, aren't they? To all of, accomplishments, it seems like. And when it comes to a book, as you said throughout the interview, I mean, they're so important in so many different ways.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, we can't do this on our own. I mean, we could try. And certainly I think some people have, but for me, it's so much more enjoyable as well when you're able to partner with others and see how it just all comes together. So I think that's been a pretty exciting part of the journey for me as well.
So do you have any new book projects that you can talk about, or is it too early?
Well, there's one, I mentioned the Thrive assessment, and I know that one of the things that I've wanted to do for some time is to walk persons through that process of identifying where they're stuck and then how to get unstuck. And so maybe that might be the next project, but I'm praying about it. I know in the Publishing in Color conference, I met with a publisher who was interested in a book idea that I have. And so I'll be writing that book proposal and see where that leads.
Excellent. Well, keep us posted, please, whether, whatever route it is that you go. please let us know. And we're glad to help get the word out about your work.
I truly appreciate that, Brian.
Well, Marva, congratulations again. Everyone, please go check out her website. Again, it's marvasmith.com. And Marva, thank you so much, and best wishes with this launch and going forward.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. See you around soon, Brian.